It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday at the Cincinnati Zoo. Late May in Ohio meant warm air, families crowding the walkways, strollers squeaking over concrete, and children tugging at their parents' hands, begging to see the animals they'd only known from picture books. The zoo was busy, but not chaotic. No alarms. No warnings. Nothing to suggest that within minutes, one decision, one step, one fall would ignite a global firestorm. The gorilla exhibit sat quietly that afternoon, framed by a moat, glass barriers, and a sense of controlled distance that made visitors feel safe. Western lowland gorillas, massive, intelligent, and powerful, moved calmly within their habitat. Among them was Harambe, a 17-year-old silverback weighing over 400 pounds. He wasn't the oldest. He wasn't the most aggressive. Keepers described him as alert, curious, sometimes dominant, but not unusually violent. At around 4 p.m., a 3-year-old boy stood near the railing with his family. Witnesses later recalled hearing him talk about wanting to go into the water. Adults nearby didn't register the words as anything more than childish imagination. Kids say strange things all the time. Then, suddenly, the boy was gone from sight. In a matter of seconds, he slipped through a gap in the barrier system, past the railing, over the bushes, and into the enclosure. The drop was not gentle. He fell roughly 10 to 12 feet, landing inside Harambe's habitat, directly into the moat area that separated the public from the animals. Screams cut through the zoo. Parents turned. Phones came out. Zoo staff froze, then sprinted. And inside the enclosure, Harambe noticed something that didn't belong. The gorilla approached. At first, there was confusion. The child was small, motionless for a moment, then moving. Harambe stood nearby, watching. To some observers, it looked like curiosity. To others, it looked like tension building, the kind that could snap at any second. What happened next would be replayed millions of times, dissected frame by frame, slowed down, zoomed in, and argued over endlessly. Harambe grabbed the boy. The gorilla pulled him through the shallow water, dragging him across the enclosure floor. The boy's body moved with the force of an animal that didn't understand fragility the way humans do. Dust kicked up. Water splashed. The crowd screamed louder. Zoo officials were now fully aware. Emergency protocols were activated. A code red situation, meaning a life-threatening emergency involving an animal, was declared. Trained response teams rushed to the scene, armed with options they hoped they wouldn't need to use. The entire situation had unfolded in less than a minute. From above, spectators saw something terrifying, a 400-pound gorilla towering over a small, helpless child. Harambe alternated between standing over him, dragging him, and holding him close. At times, the gorilla appeared calm. At others, he moved suddenly, powerfully, unpredictably. This unpredictability was the nightmare. Zoo experts later explained that gorillas, despite their intelligence, do not understand human vulnerability. What looks like gentle handling to a gorilla can be fatal to a child. One sudden movement, one attempt to assert dominance, one instinctive reaction, and it could be over. Tranquilizers were considered, but tranquilizers take time. Minutes, sometimes longer. And during that time, the animal may panic, react aggressively, or lose control of its strength. With a child already inside the enclosure, seconds mattered more than anything else. The decision was made. A zoo marksman took aim. There was no countdown. No dramatic pause. One shot echoed across the enclosure. Harambe collapsed. The boy survived. Within hours, the news spread across the United States. By nightfall, it had reached the rest of the world. Headlines were blunt and emotional. A gorilla was dead. A child was alive. And suddenly, everyone had an opinion. But the internet didn't just react, it exploded. Videos recorded by bystanders flooded social media. Some showed Harambe dragging the boy. Others captured the final moments before the shot. People slowed the footage, circled movements, analyzed posture, debated intent. Was Harambe protecting the child? Was he about to attack? Was he confused? Was he calm? Was he dangerous? Experts weighed in. Some said the zoo had no choice. Others argued the enclosure design was flawed. Many pointed fingers at the parents, accusing them of negligence. Others pushed back, saying accidents happen, and blaming grieving parents was cruel. And then came the outrage. Hashtags trended. Memes appeared almost immediately. What started as shock turned into something stranger. Harambe became a symbol. For animal rights. For internet culture. For misplaced blame. For everything people felt was wrong with modern society. But beneath the noise, beneath the jokes and the rage, there was a quieter truth that got lost. A child fell into an enclosure that was never meant to be entered. A gorilla responded as an animal would. And a split-second decision ended one life to save another. Yet even now, years later, people still ask the same question. Was there another way? In the days that followed, investigations were launched. The zoo released statements defending their actions. The parents cooperated fully with authorities. No charges were filed. Officials concluded the response was appropriate given the immediate danger. But conclusions don't end controversy. Because once the footage existed, once the internet chose sides, the story stopped being about what happened, and started being about what people believed they saw. And that belief would turn Harambe's death into something far bigger than a zoo tragedy. It would become a cultural fracture. And this was only the beginning. By the time the sun rose the next morning, the story was everywhere. Televisions in living rooms, screens in airports, radios in cars, all repeating the same words. A child fell into a gorilla enclosure, a gorilla was shot, a life was lost. The Cincinnati Zoo, once known for conservation and family outings, had become the center of a global argument overnight. What happened inside that enclosure was no longer just an incident. It was a question, and everyone wanted an answer that fit their own belief. News anchors spoke with solemn expressions, replaying the same footage again and again. The videos were shaky, zoomed too far in, blurred by panic and distance. Some clips showed Harambe standing over the child. Others showed the dragging through shallow water. None of them showed intent clearly. And yet, millions of people felt absolutely certain about what they were seeing. At the zoo, officials prepared for a press conference under intense scrutiny. Microphones were lined up. Cameras were stacked shoulder to shoulder. When the spokesperson finally stepped forward, the room fell silent. The message was measured and controlled. The child's life had been in immediate danger. The decision had been made by trained professionals. There was no time to wait for tranquilizers. The words were calm, but outside the room, they landed like sparks on dry grass. For some, the explanation made sense. For others, it sounded like an excuse. Animal behavior experts were brought onto news programs within hours. Some explained that gorillas are unpredictable around unfamiliar beings, especially small, panicked ones. Others pointed out moments in the footage where Harambe appeared calm, even gentle. The same images were used to argue completely opposite conclusions. Protection or threat. Curiosity or aggression. Hero or danger. As experts debated, the public reaction grew louder and harsher. Social media transformed the incident into a battleground. Posts flooded timelines by the millions. Some blamed the parents without mercy, calling the fall irresponsible, unforgivable. Others pushed back, reminding people how fast accidents happen, how easily a moment of distraction can turn into tragedy. The arguments weren't quiet disagreements. They were emotional, personal, and relentless. Then came the protests. Animal rights groups organized demonstrations outside the zoo and in cities far away from Ohio. Signs were raised, faces painted with gorilla imagery, voices chanting for accountability. To them, Harambe was not just an animal. He was a symbol of human arrogance, of captivity, of a system that placed entertainment above life. His death was framed not as a necessity, but as a failure. Inside the zoo, the mood was very different. Staff members moved through hallways without speaking much. Some had worked with Harambe for years, watching him grow, learning his patterns, respecting his strength. Keepers avoided cameras. Others stared at the ground, replaying the decision over and over in their minds. No statement could undo what had happened, and no justification could quiet the weight of it. Meanwhile, Investigators examined every detail of the enclosure. Measurements were taken. Barriers were inspected. Photos were reviewed. The focus shifted from the moment of the shooting to the moments before the fall. How did the child get through? Were the barriers high enough? Were the warning signs clear? The physical structure of the exhibit became part of the story, just as much as the people and the animal. Authorities eventually announced that no charges would be filed against the parents. The decision was factual, legal, and final, but it didn't slow the outrage. For many online, legality and morality were not the same thing. The conversation only grew more toxic, more emotional, more divided. And then something unexpected happened. Harambe stopped being just a gorilla. His image began appearing everywhere, on posters, profile pictures, murals, and memes. At first, it was anger, then irony, then humor that felt uncomfortable, even cruel. The tragedy morphed into internet culture, where seriousness and sarcasm blurred together. For some, it was a way to cope. For others, it felt like a betrayal of the real loss behind the jokes. The more time passed, the stranger the reaction became. Late-night hosts referenced the incident. Comment sections turned it into shorthand for chaos and injustice. Harambe's name became detached from the zoo, from the child, from the facts. He became an idea, something people invoked to express frustration with authority, systems, and society itself. But buried under the noise was a quieter truth. A child had survived something that should not have been survivable. A family was trying to return to normal life under the glare of public judgment. Zoo staff were carrying a decision they would live with forever. And an animal, who had no understanding of cameras, crowds, or consequences, was gone. As weeks passed, the headlines slowed, but the argument didn't disappear. It settled into something deeper, something unresolved. People weren't just arguing about a zoo incident anymore. They were arguing about responsibility, about control, about whether humans have the right to decide which life matters more when seconds decide everything. And no matter how many times the footage was replayed, no matter how many experts spoke, one question refused to fade. Was Harambe's death inevitable, or was it the result of a system that failed long before the shot was fired? That question would linger long after the crowds left the zoo and the cameras moved on. And it would follow Harambe's name into history.